Alright guys, welcome to this video where we're going to be designing something in Figma. You can see that I've already opened up a project and I have this page open called Portfolio Example. If you look over on the left hand side just to begin with, we've got two pages that we're working inside of. The first one's going to be wireframe and assets, which is where we are right now, and then we have our mockup page. Kind of the broad way of talking about this is that we're going to be taking something from just an idea and we're hopefully going to be making a high fidelity mockup that will mimic what the actual developed version of this site is going to look like. This video goes along with the portfolio personal site assignment that we have in Dev Classroom. And looking in front of you, there's just a few things that I've gone ahead and done ahead of time to make things easier and hopefully a little bit more accessible in this video. The very first step that I did was actually go ahead and sketch out what I want my site to look like. And the way that I do that is by thinking about the different pages that are going to be present in the site and then mapping them with kind of some placeholders for different pieces of information. Since this site is all about me or all about you, you've got to think about what it is that's important to you. And for me as a teacher, one of the things that's most important to me are the classes that I teach and the students that I work with. So with that in mind, I tried to craft my site around those ideas. Over here is our very first page, or our landing page, and I'll zoom in. The quality's not great on this, I apologize, but the drawing software that I was using was having some trouble exporting things in a nice looking way, and I just wanted to go ahead and go with it and get this video out to you guys. You can see that I've got this menu that's present on all the different pages themselves, but for this landing page here, I've used this kind of placeholder for an image. So anytime we see a rectangle with an X, that's going to essentially mean that there's going to be an image or some kind of media there. I've got this heading over here, it's just some kind of welcome message. I've got some lines that represent like a paragraph of text or some kind of little hook to get people an idea of what the site's going to be about. Maybe have a button down here, something that tells them learn more, but we'll see when we get there. In the menu itself, I've got really 4 buttons, 3 on the right-hand side as these links, and then 1 on the left-hand side. This one that's a circle with an X through it is probably going to be, because this is an ego fest, it's probably going to be my picture there. Or just for you doing it and you wanted to kind of copy some of the design here, your picture there. And then we have the different pages of classes, which are the different classes that I teach, an About Me page, and then I've got a link here for GitHub, which would go externally. So it would go to like my profile on GitHub, where I've got some projects listed and those kinds of things. If we look at the classes page, and again this arrow kind of gets cut off, but it follows right here. Another image on the right hand side, a little header that says I teach school, and then some information about that there, maybe like my teaching philosophy and my pedagogy, something like that. And then here I've got different cards that are for the different courses that I teach, and you can see they just kind of have the same format, they replicate themselves, but the content inside of them is going to be different depending upon the course itself. So for one as an example, if we were to click the Learn More button, this is just kind of the template that we would use for the classes. I've got this giant X, which means that that's going to be in the background, so I'm going to have a huge background image that represents the courses themselves, and then we just have some different information about the course. They can always go back to the classes page here, and then there's About Me that looks very similar to the welcome page, just to kind of get our feet wet. That sketch took maybe like 15-20 minutes just to go ahead and kind of draw out. You can do that by paper, you could do it in OneNote or some kind of annotation software that you may have. I use a tool called Excalidraw that's really helpful for just kind of doing rough sketches like this, but also being able to iterate on them pretty quickly and easily. Down below, I've done a little bit of work for the design as well. You can see I've gone ahead and picked some colors that we'll be using, and I've also created those styles over here on the right hand side. We'll take a look at that in just a little bit. I've gone ahead and picked a typeface, which is going to be, if I remember correctly, it's Source Sans Pro, and you can see different weights and different sizes depending upon what type of text we're going to be using on the page. And then over here on the right hand side, some different images and icons that I know I probably want to use somewhere in the site. So obviously my face, me working with a student, some things that represent different classes that I've taught, my dog because there's the About Me page, and then some icons that can just kind of be used to make things a little bit more accessible and a little bit more playful on the site itself. So that's just an overview of the work I've done so far, and thinking about kind of like aggregating all of this together. Maybe it takes about an hour just to kind of, once you get the hang of it, figure out what different pieces you're going to need. But you can kind of think of this as almost like collecting different little building blocks or Lego blocks beforehand, and then we're going to find ways of kind of incorporating them into the design of what we're going to be building. So when we actually build things, we can always come back and reference this page here, but I'm going to go to this mockup page, and you can see that I've got a blank canvas in front of me. We talked a little bit about the tools that we have access to up here, but instead of going and clicking through, we can use our keyboard as well. So to begin with, we're going to go ahead and start by creating that landing page. And in reality, I'm actually going to go ahead and kind of put placeholders for all the different pages that are going to be on my site. I'm going to use the F key, and you'll see that my cursor just changed to a crosshair. The F key is for a frame, and a good way of thinking about frames for our class and the purposes of what we're doing in this course are that frames allow us to create different views or different pages. And you'll see over on the right hand side it gives us a lot of choices for some different presets of those sizes. To begin with, and really for all these different pages that we're doing, we're going to use desktop. So if I click that, it's going to go ahead and drop that right in front of me. Now, I can go ahead and come over here to the left hand side and double click where it says desktop 1, and I can rename this. So I'm going to call it landing. That just means that that's the page that we land on whenever we first go to our site. And just to go ahead and kind of frame things out, see what I did there, I'm going to go ahead and hit the F key again. I'm going to say desktop, and I'm just going to drag this. You'll see that things snap pretty easily for us to kind of keep things lined up, which is great. And this is going to be our classes page. I'll do it again. We'll drop it in. We'll call this one about me. And then down below classes, just kind of thinking about the mapping and the structure of the site, there's going to be a few pages that have a lot of similarities, just the content's being changed out. They're the different classes that I teach. So instead of hitting the F key, I can just copy and paste, and I'll bring this down here, and I'll do it a few more times. I think I've got 4 classes, or maybe 3. We'll start with 3 and see where we need to go. We can just kind of have our placeholders in our example right there. So let me go ahead and rename these 2. I'll call this class 1, I'll call this one class 2, and then I'll call this one class 3. Now I'm kind of OCD about the way that these things fall, so I'm going to go ahead and reorganize them so they're going in the right order, just kind of with how we have it on the page itself, right? So we have our landing, then we have our classes kind of directory, and then we have all 3 of those classes below, and then we have the About Me page over here. You remember there was another one or another link that was in our menu, but that's going to be for an external link to GitHub instead of actually being for something else on this site. So in reality, I've got kind of this structure mapped out for what my site is going to look like. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 pages, and we can see them all right here in front of us right now. Now there's nothing on these pages, and what we're going to be doing is essentially creating images, the different pieces of content that are going to live on these different pages, the different elements. And then of course eventually later in the course we'll be developing these as opposed to designing these. So right now we're just getting the visual look of how things appear, and then hopefully by the end of this video we can talk about prototyping, which is actually making this sort of function like a real website, but not really. It just has the feeling of that. All right, so let's begin by going to our landing page, if I can zoom in somewhat smoothly. I kind of want to work top down here. So I want to start with our menu at the top and then work down with the remainder of the content on the page. So we can see that we just had this rectangle that goes across maybe the top, I don't know, 10% or less of the page itself. I'm going to hit R for my rectangle tool. I'm going to go ahead and create this menu, or this rectangle that will be our menu, that just goes across like this. Now I've got my size kind of where I want it, and I'm something weird at this point. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to move it out of that frame, and we'll see it reappear up here. The reason is that we've created these frames, but what we're going to do with this menu is we're going to create something called a component. A component is a piece of our site, or a piece of our page in this instance, that we're going to reuse over and over again. And the benefit of making a component is that I can have what's called the master component up here, and anytime I change its appearance or its layout, it's going to automatically make those changes everywhere else in my site. So instead of having to kind of copy and paste over and over again each time I make a change, I can make a change in one place and it will kind of filter out to all the other places that it appears as well. Let's see. So let me jump back over to this wireframe real quick, and we can see that we have our rectangle. Let's go ahead and get these links over here on the right hand side. Or actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe we should kind of think about the structure of what the color is, how it's going to look, and those things. So over here we have our fill. I'm going to go ahead and grab my styles, and let's go ahead and say primary one and just kind of see how that looks for right now. I know that I want my background to be this darker color. So actually let's bring this back down and just kind of see how it feels on top of it. I'm not a huge fan of that, I'm gonna be honest. Let me try my second color or my third color. Those kind of look worse. So just for the purpose of what we're doing right now, I'm gonna kind of leave this as is. I could even see us maybe thinking about using the background color, but doing a drop shadow just to kind of have it have a bit of depth. But we're just gonna leave it like it is for right now. And we're gonna keep working on getting all of the different pieces of content in there. So I had 3 navigation links over here, and then we'll have an image that goes over here. I'm gonna hit T for my text tool. I'm gonna go ahead and click inside the rectangle. And I know that it's way too large right now, but we know that classes is gonna be one of those buttons. Over here, I've got my styles for my different typefaces. I'm gonna go ahead and change this over to, we'll try the paragraph one, and that's probably a little bit too small, so I'm gonna go ahead and detach this. And we're gonna make a new text style over here. Let's go ahead and bump this up to, let's try 22, and let's bring the weight up to bold. That looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna make this actually white, so it stands out a little bit. And then I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste this. I'm gonna do it 2 more times. So now I've got 1, 2, 3 different nav links over here. So we've got classes, about me, and GitHub. So let's go ahead and make this about me. Then let's make this one GitHub. Now I can select these things. Whoops. I'm holding shift, so if I click on one, hold shift, and then keep clicking, I can go ahead and select all 3 of these. I'm gonna go ahead and distribute this horizontal spacing a little bit, and then I can actually drag this to make it closer or further apart. So I'm gonna make it a little bit further. And I'm gonna right click and actually say group this selection. So these 3 things just kind of belong together now. One thing that I can do is that I can turn on in a second, we'll see a way of using some dividers that help us figure out rows and columns for spacing. But for right now, we're just gonna kind of eyeball it and make sure we have a bit of padding on the right-hand side. I know that this is vertically aligned because I have this red line that appears for me and lets me know that I'm in the middle of this rectangle. Actually, let's go ahead and right-click on this, and I'm gonna say frame, actually, let's grab it all. Right-click, and I'm gonna say frame selection. So now we have this frame. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this into a component, and now we see that we have this diamond that's purple here. That means that's our master component. And if I double click on the name over here, I can call this menu. So we have our links over here, but I know that now I want to come into this part of the menu, and I want to go ahead and bring in actually my face as kind of that button that takes us back to the home page. So I'm going to come back over here to the wireframe. I'm going to come down to my face, and I'm going to go ahead and select it, copy it. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click inside this component and then paste. I'm going to hold shift, and then I'm going to click with the left mouse button and make this a little bit smaller and bring it down in here. Now what I can do is come over to the corner radius right here, and I can drag and I can keep going. And now I've got a nice circle for myself. All right, so we have our menu, and if we come back to the reference that we have over here, 1, 2, 3 links on the right-hand side, face on the left-hand side. Looks like I've got things kind of how I want them. I know the color is not still great, but since we made this a component, we can change that in just a little bit as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this component, and I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna paste, and it's on top of itself, but I can drag and bring this down to our landing page. So now I have that menu in there. Let's go ahead and for all of these, let's see if I can select them all and change the background. I'm now realizing there's a bunch down here too. So let me go ahead and drag all of these, and it will let me, that's great. And I'll go ahead and make that the right background color. And then let's go ahead and keep pasting our menu component over here. Bring it down, awesome. And one more. All right, cool. So now just as an example that we can see, if I select this master component that I have and I come over here to the colors that are selected, I can go ahead and click this and change this to accent 1. And actually, got to be honest, that looks pretty good to me from afar, but we'll see what it's like close in. But you can see how it changes in all these other components as well. If we had made this individually and just copy and pasted like this one and not turned it into a component to begin with, that wouldn't have happened. We would have had to repeat it ourselves with that work over and over again. One of the benefits of Figma in creating these components is that they can be reused. And there are ways when we're developing things as well for use in the browser that we can actually create components that can be reused as well. So that's something we can look forward to further down the line. But right now, let's keep working on our landing page that we have here. And to do that, I'm going to come back over to the wireframe. I see we've got an image on the left-hand side. I've got this little welcome text and then a paragraph there. So let's go ahead and grab the image, which actually is back over here. I want to grab this picture of me working with this student, so I'll copy it. I'll paste it. If I hold Shift and grab the corner, I can make it bigger, which is great. We'll go ahead and somewhat place that in the right place. I'm going to hit T for my text tool and go ahead and click here. And let's see what kind of text I have for myself. Whoops. Welcome message to the site. I was not very creative, so we have to be a little bit more creative here. Here's my welcome message. All right, let's go ahead and choose our style of text that we want, which is going to be our hero, which is way too big. But I gotta be honest, I want it to be big, so maybe we make this image a little bit smaller here. And then let's keep bringing this over. Let's see. We'll massage this around a little bit. Maybe we can unlink it and, you know what, make it a little bit smaller. So let's try 64. Looks pretty good to me. I'm actually going to center this. Ooh, that's the right align, or right justify. We want to center it. So we have our welcome message there. And then down below, I'm going to hit T. And instead of just clicking, I'm going to drag and make this box that's down here. And I'm going to go ahead and just say, hello there. With this selected, it's kind of taking whatever I was using before, so I'm going to go ahead and justify to the left. So we've got things on the left-hand side like there would be for a paragraph. I'm actually going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and use this paragraph text that I have, which is way smaller. And one of the great things that Figma has is a series of plugins. So I'm going to double-click and then get rid of that text in there. I'm going to right-click inside of this text box. There's this plugins option that appears. You can go to manage plugins and you can find different ones that exist in the Figma community. One great one that I've installed is called Lorem Ipsum. That just means that it's going to use some Latin filler text to come in and populate this box with a paragraph of information. So I'll go ahead and click on that. It's going to take a second to run. I like this auto-generate button because it'll go ahead and create the right amount of text based upon the size of the text and the size of the box. So I'll click on that, and now we have that in there for ourselves. So instead of me having to think about the copy or do that in advance, this is all just for the design of things. I gotta be honest, this is really not making me happy with the size of things here. So I'm gonna go in and try my H1, which is actually still pretty big. Let's try my H2, which is not good semantic HTML, but that's okay because we're just designing things right now. And we can talk later about how to make sure that we're actually writing semantic HTML when that time comes. I'm gonna go ahead and drag this so it lines up. Now we should have things being the right width. This landing page over here, if I go ahead and grab the frame, I get this option for what's called a layout grid. I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus, and you can see this red grid has appeared. I'm going to go ahead and click where the grid is and change this to columns, and I'm going to change the number to 12, which is pretty much the standard that you'll find. Because I have kind of a red color up here, I'm also going to change the color of the grid to kind of like this green. So that way I can just kind of see things standing out. What this allows me to do is just kind of space things and think about the margins that exist on my page. So if I were to move this over right here, I see that I have one full grid between the edge of my page, and then I don't start this until the second grid, so we have this gutter in between. Well, maybe I want to make sure that things line up the same way right here so that I have that same gutter and that same column over on this side of the page. So I can grab the whole landing frame and I can actually just hide this by hitting this I. And so now I can kind of see how my things are aligned there. I gotta be honest, I kind of want these two to be maybe a little bit more narrow. So let's see, let me grab this, bring this over, make sure that we're lined up here as well, and then make this maybe a little bit wider. I know that's kind of constraining the way the image looks, but I think it looks pretty good if I'm going to be honest. If we look at our wireframe and we zoom out a little bit, we have an image, we have our welcome message, and then we have our paragraph text. And if I come back here, that's pretty much all the things that I had. I think if anything, this could be maybe lowered down a little bit just to kind of more accurately match that drawing that we had. And the way I did that was just selecting it all. And then if you move the arrow keys up and down, it'll go ahead and move it little by little. If you hold down the shift key, I think it's 10 pixels at a time, it'll go ahead and move things up and down. So it'll kind of go a little bit faster for you that way. All right, that's one page down. We have a lot more to go, but fortunately we only really have to design, I think, 3 more pages, right? Because we have the classes, the about me, and then these different classes down here, they're all just the same layout with the content kind of changed out, different pieces of information there. I am going to go ahead though and stop this video here. We'll pick up with another one in just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more manageable. And in that next video, we'll probably be able to go ahead and I would say style the classes gallery and then all the classes pages. And then if we have time, we'll go ahead and do the about me, or maybe we'll save that for its own video as we finish things up and then actually create the prototype where we can click through from page to page. Thanks, guys.